So when I gushed about enjoying reading this, little did I know that Julie would come at me and say, why don't you present a workshop? And it's a very busy time of year for me, so it wasn't a great time to choose, but I've loved spending more time delving even deeper into this novel that I loved when I first read, and made lots of people read as well. So our learning goals for today, according to mine, that don't want to come up, are that participants will be able to see the possibilities of using it in the new syllabus, and that you'll be able to share ideas about teaching the novel. So hopefully we get time to do some sharing as well. Okay, it works sometimes but not others. I'm stuck to here. So you know where it fits. I think if you've had your eyes open, if you're anything to do with senior English, you know it's on that august list, and it's the end of that august list. And it's one of the modern ones amongst the canon that many of you have taught in many places for many years. So that's why we're talking about it. Now, I want to know first who has already read the novel or read up to page... Okay, that's fabulous. So the easier question then, who hasn't read the novel? Okay, so it's only a couple. So we apologise if you're halfway through. That's awesome. If you haven't, it doesn't muck things up for you.
I'm actually good with spoilers.
Okay, so that's great that we've got so many. I assumed it was going to be a green tick. That's my warning. And I'll see if I can still make this move. Don't know why. It works here but not there. Okay, so why would you consider taking on this book? So this is me speaking now. I consider it eclectic. I don't think it's like the other books I've ever taught in class. I felt like it was a really different experience. So to have something like that in Year 12 amongst, and I'm sure many of us will be having our Shakespeare there, to have something that's so different amongst it, I think is incredibly useful. I think it does come back to what it is to be a human. I think that's a lovely quality about the book. It's challenging to read, but it's exciting to read. I also decided it's probably one of the more straightforward to read as a novel. So if that would help your school to have the one for the final exam to be something that is more accessible, I think it is more accessible. I think it's engaging. I think it pushes you along. I don't think you'll go, this is awful. I did have someone who had read the first 10 or 20 pages, absolutely hated Harlow, and I think it's possible to absolutely hate Harlow, just was dreadfully annoyed by her and decided that they didn't want to read it, and I was able to say, she's supposed to be annoying. That's her function. Read on, get past Harlow. There's a whole range of things going on here, and it's not a book just about her. And so I think, you would have to help your kids through. You'd have to help your parents through the number of F words that would happen in that first. They're there to establish Harlow as that strong character. And it's obviously got a fabulous twist, which we'll talk about. And it also takes you to it. I loved, when through school, for me, the books that have stood the test of time that I remember with great clarity are ones that took me to another place. This is in a place I've never been, would never have otherwise gone to, just had no knowledge of that world, and that I think is incredibly nice for kids to be taken out of their own little lives for a moment. And those lessons that you learn about in being taken to this other place are ones that I think you can use in a whole range of ways to be more sensitive to groups, many groups in the world, to realise that it's not just us. So, and I think it's the easiest read. So I've put some reviews in there. So from Liz Jensen. I'm not going to read them. Okay, so it is heartbreaking, but it moves through, which is interesting. they're all talking about it being shattering, and I think anyone who's read it will agree. And we know it's nominated, so it's won the Pen Faulkner. It's nominated for the Booker Man, so it's, you know, it's literary fiction, but I think something more accessible. So I thought we'd start by looking at Karen Joy Fowler for a moment. I haven't read, so she's also won the California Book Award. She started writing quite late in her life, so she's got 6 novels, 4 short story collections. I've seen the Jane Austen Book Club film, but I haven't read the book. Who has read the Jane Austen Book Club? Okay, it's a different sort of novel to this, I understand from the extracts that I've read of that. And she began with science fiction stories, kind of had kids, got bored, tried dancing, wasn't good at that, and then started doing a creative writing class. So that's where it started after she'd sort of looked for the next thing in her life. She's in Dublin, whatever that is. And we know it was nominated. She lives in Santa Cruz. And after I talk about the reveal, I'll talk a bit more about her life. So I wanted us to have a look at these couple of pages. So I've got one between two, so a couple of excerpts. Now this excerpt is sitting on the, this is sitting on the website of the book. I've never done a workshop like this where everyone's done a book. So, can I ask that you quietly read the 55 to 58, and I want you, as you're reading, to be looking for the things that you will draw from this short read. I'm going to drag you back together. Hate stopping good conversations, but it's what teachers do all the time. Let's throw a few things on the board because we can broaden the scope from doing that. Who wants to start with some of the things they'd love to explore in the novel? We'll start here.
Perception of the animals.
The perception?
Deception.
Deception, yeah.
Remember, I haven't finished it because I've got page 61. So far, already.
And it's an absolute key thing for Rosemary all the way through to manage that.
It's just from this passage though.
Yeah.
It's just from this. I think one of the key things is memory and remembering.
And versions of that.
And perceptions of memory from different characters' point of view.
And the fraction self as well. The fraction self, fraction identity. Navigating society's expectations.
Any others?
Family dysfunction, and life is not perfect, it's not a fairy tale.
And just adding to that one, just the normalisation of family dysfunction, because to her that was normal. Like she accepted that, she grew up in that.
And how powerful is that for kids who go, I'm the only one with this going on, you know, in their own little world, not realising how frequent family dysfunction has, and yeah, so powerful. Yes, it's
Personal identity. She talks about it being a demarcation in her life. The removal of Emily.
that's within the family.
Yeah.
And I think as a teenager, I think that's an incredibly strong thing that kids go through, is working out where they fit in the family. I'm the one that's ignored, I'm the one that's whatever. So I think that's a powerful thing for a 16-year-old, 16, 17-year-old. Any others anyone wants to throw
It
up?
starts kind of getting into love and what love is or what it should be in that passage. A little bit how her parents met and fell in love and had this brother who then, what is it, he's dropping his stories into knives. Okay, from that, and then the terry cloth penguin ravaged by larvas, who amongst us is not, and then the family, the two daughters who the parents have promised to love them both the same. So starting to explore what is love or what it should be, and
And I think the reliability of ourselves as narrators of our own identity.
Can I add unreliable narrators to that song?
Yeah. And that's obviously a key element, which I think would work so well in that the final exam. I think the unreliable narrator is something that they wouldn't struggle to understand, that they could see the impact of that. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say, Julian Barnes' sense of an ending is very similar to that as well. You use that in intertextuality.
Have a go at that one.
I've got two more. I just want to add. One was about I think at this point she hasn't put it all together, but she's looking at the humanity of her parents, that they are fallible, and also that she is positioning herself as somebody who's outside society, and she's not entirely sure how that happened.
So she's herself as an outsider.
Yeah.
In a similar way, we sort of talk about rejection and separation. Being part of that as an outsider.
So if I was looking at doing it, I would take this lovely list, rejection and separation. And I would use that. So we can get a photo of it and I can send it out. I'm happy to provide the PowerPoint or the handout to anyone that wants it. I can just flick it back. I've emailed everyone who had registered up until now, so if we're in that email, I can send it out through that. So here's where, that should say the big reveal, but it doesn't. So, well, let's look at the big reveal. That's the title that's sitting over there. It's about to be revealed at the end. So I thought we'd look at a couple of clues about the reveal. It's a long way in, page 77. So we get clues throughout. We get this idea right at the start. To this day, the Socratic method makes me want to bite someone.
Yes, it's brilliant.
This is a beautiful little sentence. Very early on, that makes much more sense later. And then she says at parent-teacher conferences, my kindergarten teacher had said I had boundary issues. I must keep my hands to myself, she said. And then she talks about the mortification of that being said about her. And I truly had no idea that other people weren't to be touched. She just didn't get that in the way she'd been brought up. See, it's keeping on coming at the end, so it's pretty exciting. So, page 61. I've heard too often about my first birthday, how Fern had dumped out Grandma's handbag and eaten the last photograph ever taken of Grandpa then. And it still doesn't throw you to where it's going. If there'd been a second photo, I probably would have eaten it too, Lola said, as I follow Fern's lead in most things. Okay. And then we get on page 77, the actual reveal. And again, it says the big reveal eventually. So there's something you don't know about Mary. The imaginary friend of my childhood was not a little girl. She was a little chimpanzee. So, of course, was my sister Fern. I love the matter-of-fact way that goes, of course. That's how it works. Some of you will have figured that out already. Others may feel it was irritatingly coy of me to have withheld Fern's essential simian-ness for so long. And then she says, let me share my reasons for waiting so long. And I thought I would just read that page, a little bit of those reasons. So she has her reasons. And the first one is that for the first 18 years of my life, I was defined by this one fact, that I was raised with a chimpanzee. So she moves across the country to avoid it, but it still remains central to who she is. But much, much more important, I wanted you to see how it really was. I tell you Fern is a chimp, and already you aren't thinking of her as my sister. You're thinking instead that we loved her as if she were a pet. And And that's not how it is. And so that was a really nice explanation of why it was super important that we were taking one place and then shifted as readers. So I wanted to look again, the reveal, at what the author has said about this. So I will read this to you. This is the author's explanation of why she had to do it this way. The longer answer is found in a point her brother Laing makes when she talks to her about her father's works. It's like, have I lost something? But yes, I haven't. Okay, this is why. The short answer is that there was no other way Rosemary Margarita could have told it. Okay, that's why she did it that way. The longer answer is found in a point her brother Lowell makes when he talks to her about her father's work. Lowell complains that her father, in his careful scientific way, started by assuming Fern's difference from humans. This put the onus on Fern to prove herself at every point. Lowell says it would have been just as careful and scientific to start at the other end, assume Fern's similarities to human children and demand the proof of difference. It would have been more Darwinian, he says, to start with an assumption of kinship. And having gone to the end, reading back to hearing this, it has an extra resonance for me. I wanted to start the book with the assumption of kinship in that same way. I wanted the reader to assume the similarities before looking for the differences. In order to accomplish that, I felt I had to talk about Fern first as my sister and only later as a chimpanzee. So for me, I was looking at the challenges and the opportunities of having that reveal in the classroom. So the trick is you can't write everything in your guide. If you're connecting it with the film and you put a film that gives it away, you can't put the film in your guide. So, that's a little challenge because we always put the text there and some kids like to read ahead. And so I wouldn't want all the text showing there. So it's hard to manage driving that reveal together because it's so far in, You might read the first chapter together, the first two, you wouldn't frequently read to page 77 together. So it means people are going to hit it at different times in the classroom, or you're going to go right through to 77. That's a decision you have to make. Anyone thought about how they would go about that, which way they'd go?
I was just saying, you pick up the text from the library on Friday. So read up to here by Monday's lesson. Yeah, but yeah, you can't. Yeah.
Or read up to just before there, and then as class read the review.
Yeah, but some would read ahead. If at least everyone's had a
Would you
weekend.
tell them all there's a reveal?
No.
I feel like if you didn't tell them, you wouldn't be able to shut them up. They'd be going, get on your face and straight away. That's what I would do.
That was what I thought.
You'd probably tell them,
I feel like I would tell them that there is a reveal there, and I'm not going to spoil it for you. You know what I did? I have a habit of always wanting to know how many pages are in a book. It's just a stupid habit, but it's like, yes, I've 1/3 of the way through the book. That's what my mind does, even though I don't struggle to read. And so, if you flick to the back of this book to find how many pages, you see essay after essay about chimpanzees. And so I destroyed it for myself. That said,
I read a review that had a spoiler.
they all have, from what I can read, they all spoil it. All the reviews.
It's kind of hidden that in the novel from the very first page, but I didn't know something.
As soon as someone says chimpanzees, you can't reverse it. You can't. They can go back there.
The ebook has an advantage. It tells you at the start. You see on the bottom line 312 pages. So
Which book? Sorry.
in an ebook,
Yeah.
it tells
So,
you how many pages, but it doesn't take you to the end.
If
of the
you
book.
have anyone using the paper copy, tell them not to turn to the back if I'm loading, because I'm sure I'm not the only one that does that, like to know what's coming. So the paper version will hurt that.
I think I'd hand it out, we'd read so far, and then I'd take all the books back in, and then we'd discover it together.
That's not So these are the things you have to plan, obviously. Plan how you approach it. You might go, this year I'll do it this way, and this year I'll do it next year I'll do it another way. But to me, the opportunities are huge. It's a real experience to go through a big reveal like that, to be a con for so long. And I think so. Was anyone that thought that before they got there, that didn't have a clue otherwise?
They thought that there was something. Yeah, I felt like there was a dissonance in the way that she was talking about her sister and the disappearing. Thought there's something going on here as to it being a chimpanzee. That certainly was the big reveal. But there was this dissonance that I was very aware of up to the reveal.
Well, I found hilarious. I've been listening to the audiobook and I fell asleep putting one of my boys to bed last night listening to this. And it just happened to be that reveal section. I woke up and like, oh, what have I missed? And I just kept listening. I'm going, I think I've missed something really important. And I went back and I'm like, oh my gosh.
It was a moment. Yeah, it was pretty important. So I reckon you can play the secrecy really well. I reckon that it will stop anyone from not starting. I think there won't be anyone in your class that won't go, yeah, I'm not going to bother reading it all. I think you'll be engaged in that process. It will just push them in. And I reckon there'll be heaps of kids that will go back and read from the beginning and go, what? And want to go back. Maybe at the end, but and check and flip back and search for things, which is just what we want the kids to learn how to do. To find those clues and go, oh, there. So I think that was a massive advantage to forcing kids to do that.
Just on my experience, it was a little bit funny because my wife is a psychologist and the librarian at the school said, oh, Darren, we've got to read this book, it's fantastic, you know, it's about psychologists who uses animals for experiments, etc. And I went home and told my wife that. And over the day, she went on to and did a review, and I came back for her to school the next day, and she said, I think you've got a different book. This one has nothing to do with animals in the review. And so I said, oh, okay, fair enough. Maybe I misunderstood what she'd said, and so I still didn't get it.
You still didn't get it. You still believed because your mind said this is logical.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Okay, that's fabulous. Can I say that having had it destroyed by my own obsession, I still loved reading it. So I was just going, wow, it would be even better if I hadn't. And so there's a lot of talk around about whether you destroy it by knowing as well. So it's still effective. I don't know what I've done in this thing, but anyway. So I also thought it was really powerful to look at some of those key characters, and I think all of the other characters sort of act as foils for Rosemary, I would consider. So when we understand that character, to me, it's as a foil for understanding her. They're always reflecting back on Rosemary herself. You know, so I wanted you just to read the quotes. I've pulled out some quotes for each character just to play around with it. It's on page 6 and 7. And I wanted you to, each group, so let's say you can be a Harlow group, you can be a Rosemary's family group, you can be a Fern group, and then you can be a Harlow, Rosemary's family and a Fern, and you can go wherever you like. So just have a go at reading the little quotes that are there and thinking of questions at the end and come back to us.
Rosemary's
I'm going to bring you back in again so that we can share some ideas. We've got 2 Harlow tables. And can you have someone ready to share with us? Someone from your table. Thank you. So we've got 2 Harlow tables. Which one wants to start? They want to start. We've got 3 Harlow tables. Go.
We discussed a lot of things really about Harlow. She's definitely a flaw for Rosemary. We were talking about the idea that she probably becomes a sibling. What's the imaginary character, Mary? Mary goes and Harlow comes, but she's actually a real life character. She's outgoing, extroverted, she's everything that Rosemary isn't. But we said Rosemary's the more dangerous of the two. She's one of those quiet ones that you've got to watch out for. Even though we see that behaviour from Harlow, I think there's a bit more to Rosemary. She tries to fit in with Harlow and, you know, the stereotypical rat bag college behaviour that she gets up to, but then realises that's not really her world. When I first read it, Harlow annoyed me as well. I was annoyed by her because I was so focused on finding out what happened that Harlow kept coming back into it and was annoying me. She was distracting me from finding out what happened with Fern. But then later she does come into her own, and I did accept her and realised her purpose. And I don't want to say too much because some people haven't read it. But yeah, there were some connections with other characters that she made and Rosemary made with characters related to Harlow. So they actually crossed paths there.
She gave an avenue for Rosemary to.
Yeah, but Rosemary gave Harlow one as well. So, yeah.
Ladies in the middle, entranced by Harlow.
I really like the first quote because it's such an irony because that is who Rosemary used to be. And then the disappearance of Fern is what changed her behaviour. And even though I can see that she is a foil for Rosemary, I also still feel like she is closer to what Rosemary might have been if Fern had stayed for longer or if they worked through their childhood differently than just everybody shutting up about it. And I think that, and I dislike Harlow, I admit that, because I hate the disruptive nature of her. She freaked me right out. But for Rosemary, it's sort of like a horrified attraction. Like she likes the balls that Harlow's got that sometimes she wishes she had. It's that, you know how she often talks about, what if I said this, or what if this came out of me, sort of stuff. And it just reminds me of that, like Harlow's her exploding all over the place.
And the last table, the Harlow table.
Okay, so Harlow is a powerful personality, and there must have been some degree, perhaps, of fascination that takes her away from her own insecurities and fractured self for a while. So providing some sort of relief, I think, that there was so much explosiveness to her character that it was a break from her realising. But I actually circled the verb attracts in that first question because I thought in that first part of where the quotes are coming from, I'm not sure that's an attraction at that point. For me, it's almost
She's repellent.
Yeah, it's repellent.
I agree.
And
challenge the question.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's true. But I mean, it's an important question to ask because eventually you get to that point that it was more of a repellent thing than an attraction. But together, the pair make some sort of a whole, perhaps. I don't know.
I'm just trying to remember the phrase that she uses while she's watching her Harlow's outburst. She says, it's the first time I've ever met somebody who is something and a faker at once. She's a liar. She said she's a liar, but she's not. And she had me hooked in, but not because I believed her, but because I could see she was doing it. But I can't remember what the phrase was. She's a something and a faker, both at the same time, which connects in with what you're saying, yeah.
And how double-sided are we? You know, what persona do we show? What mask are we wearing at any particular point in time? And perhaps that's what she's identifying with too, because she does wear a mask. She's controlling her desire to talk all the time.
Yeah, so there's actually a role, like is there a role reversal at that point? Is it where they're at the jail at the end and she says to Rosemary, you know, shut the hell up, you've been talking all night, like she's taking on Harlow, and Harlow then mysteriously becomes the quiet one, and they actually role reverse, I think. I'm into it again.
Thank you. That's a lovely discussion of Harlow, and you definitely should write attracts repels. That would be a lovely way to ask that question. attracts stroke repels Rosemary to Harlow much better. Let's go to Rosemary's family, and I sort of put them all together, and they're different to each other, but I think they operate very much as the family. Who wants to talk to us first?
Like a book.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, well, we talked about how through these quotes we see that she is a little bit awkward and not overly accepted, but she's hyper aware of her place within her family and the dynamics of love. And probably the phrase that we picked up the most is from the father, "You've always been a follower," and that was in respect to her being arrested because of Harlow, but then the foreshadowing that has with Fern.
I like that quote there where it's talking about the idea we would spend the holiday talking about anything as potentially explosive as far as was fiction. We all knew this. My parents persisted in pretending that we were a close-knit family. And I haven't read the book yet. So just judging from that, she obviously felt that complete disconnect from her family, that she was on the fringe, that her parents didn't understand her, and she indeed, actually, it sounds like she understands her parents. She knows that they would talk about certain things. That's what I get from that. But that total disconnect of the family is ignored.
And then the other group over here.
Yeah, we looked also at that theme of outside very much, and thought it was quite amusing given that, or quite telling given that she is in a family which includes a chimpanzee, that she sees herself as the outsider in that situation. And as well as that, we also looked more into that idea of secrecy with the bags and the mother's journals, and the idea that she's, despite constantly talking about her family's secrecy, she's very much complicit in it. She doesn't want to know everything for quite some time.
My mother became so invested with the journals. She's like, how did you find the journals? And they're going to do all this. She was so excited by the journals. Because it's this hope that she keeps getting thwarted as you go through. And so, yeah.
I found the journals actually disappointing once they actually opened. I'm like, I thought it would be more interesting once that's actually revealed.
I think that isn't that the point though, that there's so much investment in the journals and as the reader,
And I kind of felt that way
though.
I was just saying about the ending and stuff. I was like, oh yeah.
It was like technically the more she wanted them, or the less she wanted them, the more she needed them. And by the time she finally is a little bit interested, she doesn't need them again, or she's resolving.
They change. They have this very crazy life of their own. I think those characters know themselves.
And then the substitute that comes instead of the better.
And then the last group, who's talking about Fern and what we know of Fern.
I know we talked about the fact that the idea of Fern is very much caught up with presenting Rosemary's identity, and it isn't until, I suppose, Rosemary accepts that Fern is a part of her identity that she then is able to move forward in the rest of her life. Like she spends all of this time at college bouncing from one thing to another because there's this part of herself that she's really shut down and really ignored, and how that has then gone and influenced her life. And the fact that, I suppose, like, the silencing of Fern to such an extent in her life is almost stunting her growth in life.
And again, I noticed that you're always talking about about Rosemary. You're using Fern to talk about Rosemary. So I suppose my argument when I was looking at the characters was that they aren't necessarily as full-bodied and they change. Parents don't change a lot. They don't develop and go up and down very much. We get new insights, but not great a deal. So I would argue that, it's a lot about Rosemary's character, and each of the characters is functioning around to reveal about Rosemary. So I might be wrong, but that's my current theory. And in the last group, do you want to tell us something about Fern?
Well, only that, from Fern we learn about that, as you said, about the loss, we learn about her loss and the way she has to deal with that. But also about love. The one about remember how Beth loved us. But then they don't want to talk about it. But then also, I have to read clothes, so Fiona also has to. Habits, learning family habits and expectations in a family.
Thank you for your insights. So I wanted to talk for a few minutes about how it fitted within the English syllabus. I don't think you have to be a crazy brain to be able to work this sort of stuff out. I listed on the front page as my sort of fishing through the syllabus to work out, you must have this, this, say this, this, say this. I just kind of put all the times that something said you must do, so that to fish my way through it. And so for this, obviously it's meant to go with the summative assessment, and characters would be huge. There's plenty of important working things, but the narrative devices would be extremely powerful to study and allow them to say some quite sophisticated things and relate them back beautifully to the idea of memory and the unreliable narrator. And I think that could make them look pretty sophisticated. So I didn't go into that in much detail. I thought it would also fit into the I saw that says 1, it should say IA1 and IA3. I couldn't see it in 2, but maybe you could. So for the first one, that's a written text, a feature article, a blog, assignment one, a longish one. I thought you could tie it into animals, and that's one where you wouldn't mention the name of the film until you get in your overview, so that you can spoil it. But Project NIM covers very similar territory, so it starts with all the energy and excitement. If we've got a chimpanzee in our family, and they have the chimpanzee, and they have all this fun, and they teach it to speak or to communicate and all this sort of stuff, and then it has an element of tragedy as well in that film. So that's a highly lauded documentary that I think would allow a kid to write about many of these things, about the idea of what it is to be human, family identity, as well as the ethical treatment of animals and/or. So how else could it fit? I think it could fit really nicely into the imaginative. I think there were lots of ways it could do that. So we have monologues from characters who can challenge the silence. There's plenty of silences, the book's full of silences, there's plenty of intersects where you can jump in and rewrite all sorts of things. You could write many stories about, so I think it could inspire them, having moved into that very different world, to be able to open someone's eyes about a whole range of things. So I could see that as a powerful novel in that space. So the narrative techniques, the shifting backward and forward, beginning in the middle, and then that allows us to have that tension. But it also, the question that was posited with this table was, does that make it too hard for the kids to have those shifts in time? Is anyone who's read it want to give a comment on whether they think that's too hard? That it makes it too difficult for them?
Well, year 12, I wouldn't think so, because it's not exactly an unknown new narrative technique. So I don't think it's about, I guess, working and talking through the ways that narratives work.
My answer was that I think she gives us so much guidance. And those shifts are just annoying because you have to wait long to find out what happened to Fern. And we're off here, but we're going to come back. And so it just keeps that tension going. So you don't get to the answer you want straight away. You have to keep working your way through. So her directly addressing us throughout, I think, gives us to me makes it pretty simple for the kids to
You could
follow.
you could actually use it to show students how to weave in flashbacks and changes in time smoothly.
She certainly does do that well.
Classes.
Yeah, the signposts are really, sorry.
A lot of the TV series that they're watching at the moment play with narrative technique so that it's probably familiar to them.
So to me, it gives it plenty of material to work with. The unreliable ability of memory. That story I told Harlow is really in the middle of the story. Doesn't mean it isn't true. Only I honestly don't know anymore if I really remember it or I only remember how to tell it. So she's constantly reviewing in her own head her role as the narrator, her role as being reliable or unreliable. So I think it's done quite beautifully. So in terms of teaching the background, I was going to play the clip for Project Nim. Have a look at it. It's really, it's short, will give you a sense of it. Certainly, I've given some indications of what I do to start. I work from the cover and some things you work with. I would work around family and emphasise memory and family at the start so that you've got something to push them to foreground so that you're not just jumping straight in, because I think it's useful. And another tack I thought would be to look at a film called The Daughter by Simon Stone. It's based on Ibsen's play The Wild Duck. It's got Jeffrey Rush and Randy Otto and those other people in it. It's a dark family tragedy, it's a bit stagey, but again the environment is an incredibly powerful character within that film. It's a haunting thing. I don't even know where. It looks like Victoria to me, rural Victoria, but I'm not sure. So I've left it too late to show you that one. But again, it's got secrets in family, and this is not the only film, but it's an Australian film, so it's a way of taking it to a high quality Australian text that would tie it in. In my head, I see, when you've done the novel, I would be using my poetry or my film at that point in that first unit. That's how, as my primary, my large text to work from. And to me, that was a good one. And so there'd be all those things: the secrets haunting the past, the natural environment. Some parts of nature taking on strong roles within the text. And this is my last thing. I wanted to ask, where are your thoughts up to? Which text are you currently planning to use to teach your exams? Has anyone got a thought already? I just wanted a hands up sense of that.
We're gearing towards the best.
So hands up the number of Macbeths. I think there'd be a few. Okay. Hamlets. Capsize. Burial rites. Maybe. Is anyone thinking of this one? Okay, so hands up the number that are thinking of this one. Okay, so there's a number in this room. And 1984. Okay, my mind's going more at Laing, the Austin. Jane Eyre, anyone go with Jane Eyre? I also wanted to, I've got 30 seconds. How many people are considering changing text in their school, bringing a text that you haven't yet had into your school? And the last quick question, do you feel constrained by the text list? Do you feel this is going to make it hard for you? Or that
it's forcing change.
We feel constrained by the literature one.
The literature one's finding
We've
out?
got a number of ones we can choose from. Yes, but literature,
Sorry. A lot of them are dark and depressing. I suppose if you haven't read this one, this has sad and quite tragic things in it, but it's told in quite a light-hearted way. And I think the light-heartedness of it will be welcome relief if you're plotting through 1984 and the best other things. So I think that's about it. So, thank you for coming today. It's been lovely to have you. Thank you.